Emily Turner woke up later than usual that quiet Sunday morning in their small Portland home. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and the whole house felt peaceful in a way she hadn't felt in months. She was exhausted from work, overwhelmed, from trying to manage everything alone and still half asleep when her younger brother, Daniel, stepped into her room with a nervous look. "Emily, my laptop died. Can I use yours for the college portal?" His voice was gentle, careful, like he didn't want to disturb her. She didn't think twice. She just reached over to her desk, grabbed her laptop, and handed it to him. She didn't even remember what she had been doing last night. She only remembered sitting in bed thinking about life, thinking about how distant Daniel had been recently, and wondering why she felt so alone, even though they lived under the same roof. She didn't remember what she had searched, didn't remember what she had bookmarked, and she definitely didn't remember closing all her tabs. Daniel walked out, and she stayed in bed, stretching, letting her eyes finally open fully. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe slowly. But downstairs, Daniel had opened the browser. Hey, and her entire heart, her worries, her fears, her private feelings spilled onto the screen before him. The screen lit up with her recent searches. How to tell someone you care about them without scaring them. Do families drift apart even if they love each other? Signs someone is pulling away from you emotionally. How to fix a broken sibling bond. Daniel stared at the screen. His stomach tightened. He felt an unexpected wave of guilt wrap around him, almost like it was pulling him down. He hadn't expected to see anything personal. He just wanted to submit his application. But now he couldn't look away. These weren't random searches. These weren't jokes. These were real questions, heavy, emotional, and painfully honest. He whispered, almost to himself, why didn't you say anything?" Emily, still unaware of the storm brewing downstairs, walked into the kitchen and started making coffee. She hummed quietly, something she hadn't done in a long time. She felt good today. Light? For the first time in months. But then she heard it. A soft gasp. A small, shocked sound. Her brother's voice. She froze. Suddenly, every memory of last night rushed through her. Every moment she sat alone in her room searching things on Google. Every quiet fear she typed into the search bar. Every article she bookmarked about loneliness, emotional distance, and how to talk to someone you love. Her heart slammed in her chest. He saw it. She didn't know how, but she knew. She didn't need to see the screen. She felt the truth hit. Her like cold water daughter steps were hesitant as she walked into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch with the laptop on his lap, staring at her searches like they were answers to questions he didn't even know he had. When he looked up at her, his eyes were soft but full of worry. "Emily," he said quietly, "were these yours?" She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat tightened too fast, too hard. The kind of tightness that comes not from fear, but from someone suddenly seeing too much of your heart. She pretended to be calm, forcing a small exhale. "Yeah, I guess I forgot to close everything." Daniel closed the laptop slowly, carefully, like he was afraid it might break if he pushed too hard. But the truth was, he didn't know what to do with what he saw. He didn't know how to react. He didn't know whether to apologize or ask more. He stood up. "Emily, why didn't you tell me you've been feeling this way?" She looked away, walking past him toward the window. The rain outside blurred the neighborhood into soft, watery shapes. She liked rain on days like this. It felt like the world understood her. "I don't want to talk about it," she said quietly. That wasn't anger. That wasn't avoidance. That was fear. Fear of opening up. Fear of being honest. Fear of admitting how alone she had felt even, with a person she loved most living under the same roof. Daniel stepped closer. You can talk to me. I'm right here." But she shook her head. Not now. Her voice cracked in a way she hoped he didn't notice, but he did notice. He noticed everything now. Daniel reached out a hand but let it fall halfway. He didn't know how close he was allowed to get. He didn't know what she needed from him. And that realization hurt him in a way he never expected. "Emily, I didn't know you felt like this," he said softly, and that was the truth. He didn't know, he didn't notice. He'd been too busy with school, friends, his future, things that were never wrong to focus on, the things that made Emily feel more and more like a shadow in her own home. She swallowed hard. "It's fine. I'm fine." She, WASN single quotes, T. Daniel knew she wasn't. But she walked away anyway, heading back to the kitchen, her shoulders tense, her breathing uneven, her mind swirling with 1,000 things she wasn't ready to admit. Daniel stood there alone, holding the laptop to his chest like it carried something fragile, his sister's heart, her fears, her unspoken emotions. He sat slowly, unsure of what he should do next. He stared at the searches again in his mind. How to fix a broken family bond. How to tell someone you care about them. He realized then how blind he had been, how many signs he had missed, how little he actually understood about what Emily had been going through. A wave of guilt washed over him. But beneath it was something else, something strong and clear. He needed to fix this. He needed to show her she wasn't alone. He needed to be there, really there for her. But Emily had already walked away from the living room, leaving Daniel with the laptop, the truth, and more questions than he could handle. The quiet of the house returned, but it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the kind of silence that held things unsaid, heavy, emotional, and waiting to break open. And as Daniel sat there, still stunned by what he had discovered, he whispered to himself, "I have to make this right." But he didn't know how. Not yet, and that uncertainty hung in the air, setting the stage for everything that would come next. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about what he saw in Emily's browser history. Even as the week went on, even when he tried to focus on school, his mind kept drifting back to those quiet searches that revealed more than any conversation they had shared in months. He replayed everything: her tired eyes, her rushed mornings, her gentle smile that seemed to hide something heavy. He finally understood that the distance between them wasn't accidental. It had been growing slowly, silently, right in front of him, at home. Emily moved through the days like someone trying not to take up space. She cooked dinner, folded laundry, and paid bills with a mechanical calmness. She asked him how his classes were, smiled at his stories, nodded at his updates. But her words were thin, almost fragile, as if she didn't know whether she had the right to share her own feelings anymore. She had always been the responsible one, the one who stayed strong after their parents passed away, the one who made sure the house felt like a home. But lately, she seemed tired in a way that didn't show on her face, only in the quiet pauses between her words. One evening, after a long day of classes, Daniel walked past her bedroom. Her door was slightly open, and he saw her sitting on the floor with an old cardboard box beside her. She held a stack of family photos, running her fingers over the edges as if the pictures were something fragile, something she wasn't ready to let go of. She smiled at one photo of them when they were younger, Emily in her early 20s, Daniel just a teenager. They were both laughing, arms around each other, sunlight catching their hair. They looked like everything in the world was simple and safe. Daniel leaned quietly against the doorframe. He realized he couldn't remember the last time they had taken a picture together. He couldn't remember the last time they had talked for more than a few minutes without rushing. He couldn't remember the last time he had asked her how she felt, not what she needed to do, not what bills needed paying, not what groceries they were out of, just how she felt. "You miss how things used to be, don't you?" he asked softly. Emily startled, quickly wiping the corner of her eye even though she hadn't cried. She looked up at him, trying to hide the emotion in her face. But Daniel saw it. He saw everything now. "Sometimes," she replied, her voice small. "It's silly, I know." "It's not silly," he said, stepping inside the room. He sat, next to her without touching her, leaving a respectful bit of space, but close enough for her to feel that he was there for her. It wasn't the closeness they used to have, but it was more than they'd shared in a long time. Emily sighed and set the photo aside. I just feel like things are changing so fast. You're growing up. You're out with your friends more. You're making your own life. And I'm happy for you, Daniel. I really am. But sometimes I feel like I'm standing still, watching everything move without me. She didn't raise her voice, didn't cry, didn't blame him. It was just honesty, raw, simple honesty from someone who rarely let her feelings show. Daniel felt the air shift inside the room. He'd known she was feeling something, but he hadn't realized the depth of it. He had been so focused on building his future that he forgot the person who had built every part of his past. You're not losing me, he said. I'm just trying to find my place in the world. But that doesn't mean I want distance. From you. Emily gave a weak smile. I know. I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm just scared that the only family I have left might drift away without meaning to. Her voice cracked gently, the kind of crack that came from years of holding everything together alone. Daniel looked at her more carefully than he had in months. She wasn't angry. She wasn't blaming him. She was scared of being forgotten, scared of being left behind, scared of becoming a quiet shadow in her own home. And he realized she had been holding that fear alone for far too long. He picked up one of the photos and studied it. We look happy here. We were, she said softly. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That was enough. It still is, he replied. Emily looked away, almost as if she didn't believe him fully, and Daniel understood why. Words were easy. Time was harder. And his time had been spent everywhere except beside her. Over the next few days, Daniel paid closer attention. He noticed how Emily woke up early and didn't rest until she had checked every task off her mental list. He noticed her smiling at him over dinner, trying to pretend things were fine. He noticed how she squeezed her hands together when he mentioned hanging out with friends. And he noticed how quiet the house felt when he left. One night when he came home late from a group study session, he found Emily sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her. She was awake, staring at the TV, though it wasn't on. You're up? He asked. She nodded. Just couldn't sleep. He sat down beside her. Emily, you know you can talk to me, right? She nodded again, but her eyes stayed fixed on the blank screen. Talking is easy for some people, she said quietly. For me, it's different. I'm used to taking care of things, not sharing them. Daniel felt guilt rise in his chest again. She shouldn't have had to take care of everything. She shouldn't have had to pretend she wasn't lonely. And most of all, she shouldn't have had to Google how to fix a family bond when he was right there. He wanted to say something meaningful, something comforting, something that would close the distance between them in an instant. But he didn't know exactly what she needed. So instead, he stayed beside her in silence, offering a presence he should have offered months ago, for the first time in a long time. They sat together quietly, not because they had nothing to say, but because they were both finally beginning to understand what had been missing. The distance between them wasn't gone, but it had a name now. It had a shape. It had a story. And Daniel knew he wanted to fix it, really fix it. But what he didn't know was that another truth was coming. One he hadn't shared yet. One that would shake the fragile peace between them again. A truth that had the power to bring them closer. Or pull them even farther apart. Daniel spent the next week trying to be more present, more aware, more connected to Emily. He helped with chores, sat with her during meals, and even paused his social plans to spend evenings at home. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he wanted her to feel that she wasn't alone anymore. Still, he sensed something unspoken between them, something she wasn't ready to share yet. Something his sudden attention couldn't fully fix. By Friday afternoon, he finally made a decision. He texted her during her lunch break. Let's get coffee tonight. Stuss. Emily responded with a short, cautious, "Okay." That evening, they met at a small cafe near the river, a place they used to go when life felt too heavy. The air was cool, the river calm, and soft music drifted through the cafe. Emily walked in wearing a navy blue sweater, her hair tied back simply, giving her a quiet, thoughtful look. Daniel was already seated, fidgeting with a coffee cup as if trying to settle nerves he didn't usually have around her. When she sat down, he tried to smile, but it came out uneven. "Thanks for coming." "Course," she said, though her voice held a careful distance. Like she wasn't sure what this meeting was about. For a moment, they just sat there, listening to the soft clinking of cups and murmured conversations from nearby tables. The silence wasn't tense, but it was full of questions. It's full of emotions neither had sorted yet. Then Daniel took a breath. A deep one, like someone getting ready to open a door that had been locked for too long. "Emily, I saw more than just your searches that day." Her eyes rose slowly, cautious. "What do you mean?" He swallowed hard. I saw your bookmarks too." She froze. A tiny moment, barely noticeable, but enough to show she remembered exactly what was saved. Their articles about emotional burnout, loneliness, fear of losing family connections. How to talk to someone you love when the bond feels fragile. Daniel continued quietly. "You bookmarked things about feeling invisible, about being scared you're not enough, about worrying that people will leave." Emily felt her chest tighten. She didn't want to hear her private fears said out loud. Made them too real, too sharp. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "Daniel, it wasn't meant for anyone else to see." "I know," he said softly, "and I'm not upset you didn't tell me." "I'm upset I didn't notice." She didn't answer. She picked up her coffee cup, holding it with both hands, as if warming them against something cold inside her. Daniel leaned forward. "Emily, I should have been there. You've been carrying so much alone. I didn't realize how heavy it was for you. And that's on me." His voice wasn't dramatic or loud, it was gentle, honest. The kind of truth that comes when someone finally understands how their choices have affected another person. Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't want to burden you." "You're not a burden," he said immediately. "You never were." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked quickly, refusing to let tears fall. She had always hated crying in front of him. It made her feel vulnerable in a way she didn't think she was allowed to be. She whispered, "I didn't want to hold you back from anything." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You never held me back. If anything, you made my life possible. You've done everything for me since Mom and Dad passed." "You didn't get a break, Emily. Not once." She looked up at him, finally really looked. Her eyes were tired but also hopeful, like she wanted to believe him even if part of her still felt unsure. He softened his voice. "Emily, you're allowed to feel lonely. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed. And you're allowed to tell me when things hurt." For the first time in months, her face loosened. Her shoulders dropped. She let her breath out slowly, as if finally releasing pressure she had held inside far too long. But then Daniel's tone shifted. He hesitated, his eyes dropping to the table. "There's something else I haven't told you." The air changed instantly. Emily's expression tightened again. She set her cup down carefully. "What is it?" Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, nervous. "You remember how busy I've been these last few months?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah. Classes, friends, projects." "That's part of it," he said. "But not all of it." Emily waited, her heart already bracing for something she couldn't name yet. Daniel exhaled. "I applied to universities outside Oregon." Her face froze, not in anger, not in shock, but something quieter. Something like fear wrapped in sadness. She knew he wanted to explore life beyond their town, but she didn't expect the words to hit her so deeply. "And," he continued, voice trembling, "I got accepted months ago." Emily's breath caught. For a moment, she didn't speak. She felt something soft inside her fall, not break, but fall like a realization she wasn't prepared for. "You didn't tell me," she whispered. "I know," he said, guilt pressing heavily into his words. "I didn't know how. I didn't want you to think I was abandoning you." Emily looked away toward the rain-speckled window. Lights from the river shimmered across the glass. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to stop you from living your life, Daniel." He leaned forward. "It wasn't that I was scared. I was scared that if I left, you'd feel even more alone. And when I saw your searches, I realized you already did." His honesty wasn't sharp, it was gentle, but it hit her harder than anything else he could have said. Emily closed her eyes, steadying herself. "I'm happy for you," she said, though her voice trembled. "You deserve good things. You deserve a future." "But I don't want you to think you're losing me," Daniel replied, reaching out slowly across the table. This time, Emily didn't pull back. He took her hand carefully, warmth spreading into her cold fingers. "You're my sister, Emily. You're my family. Nothing changes that, not school, not distance, nothing." Her eyes softened with emotion she tried to hide. "But COULDN, single quotes T. Daniel held her hand a little tighter. "I'm telling you now because I want us to face this together, not separately. I don't want another secret between us." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. But the silence wasn't cold anymore, was healing, warm, honest. It was the kind of silence where two people finally understand how much they matter to each other. Emily finally whispered, "Thank you for telling me." Daniel smiled, small, humble, hopeful. "We'll figure it out together." The first time in months, Emily truly believed it. But deep inside, she knew the next part of their story wouldn't be easy. Distance was coming, change was coming, and family love was about to be tested in ways neither expected. The night after their cafe conversation, the house felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, just quieter in a thoughtful way. Emily lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling, repeating Daniel's words in her head. He was leaving. He had known for months, and he had been scared not of the future, but of hurting her. That truth sat inside her like a gentle ache. It didn't overwhelm her, but it didn't fade either. Daniel, in his room across the hall, couldn't sleep either. He kept thinking about the way Emily tried to smile through her worry, the way her voice trembled when she said she was happy. For him, he wanted her to believe she wasn't losing him, but even he knew that promises felt different when real change was so close. Morning came too quickly. Emily made breakfast, moving with her usual careful grace, but Daniel could tell. Her thoughts were far away. He watched her quietly as she placed a plate in front of him. "You don't have to pretend everything is normal," he said softly. She paused, then sat down across from him. "I'm trying. I don't want you to feel guilty." "But I do," he admitted. "I should have told you." She shook her head. "Daniel, you're young. You're allowed to have dreams that don't include me in every part of them." "But you're part of my life," he said. "And I don't want you to feel like I'm leaving you behind." Emily looked down at her coffee. "I know you're not. But it still feels like everything is changing at once." And that was the truth. They were both feeling the same fear, just from different sides. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's departure date grew closer. Boxes gathered in his room. Forms filled the kitchen table. Acceptance letters and orientation schedules arrived. In the mail, every envelope reminded Emily that the time she always knew would come was finally here. Still, she tried to be strong. She helped him pack. She bought him a new jacket. She made lists of things he might need in another state. She even helped him plan his travel route. Daniel could see the effort in every action, the way she forced herself to treat his leaving as something exciting, even though it broke her heart quietly. One afternoon, while packing his books, Daniel paused and looked at Emily. "What happens when I'm gone? What will you do?" She smiled softly. Keep going. I always do. But will you be okay? He asked. She hesitated. Then she answered with honesty instead of strength. I'll miss you. More than you realize. But I want you to be proud of me. I want to show you that I can stand on my own too. Her answer hit him with more emotion than he expected. He stepped forward, pulling her into a gentle hug. She stiffened at first, she always did, but then she relaxed, resting her chin lightly. On his shoulder, I'll call you, he whispered. I know, she said. And visit, he added. I know, and you can visit me too. She smiled lightly against his shoulder. We'll see. As the last week approached, both siblings began feeling the weight of their final days together. They cooked dinner together more often. They watched old home videos. They stayed up late talking in the living room, laughing softly like they used to when the world felt easier. On Daniel's last night at home, the air was heavy with emotion neither knew how to express. Emily sat on the couch, holding a mug of tea, staring at the small lamp glowing beside her. Daniel walked into the room and sat down next to her. You okay? He asked. She nodded, trying to be. He studied her face carefully. You know, what happened with your browser history? It didn't scare me. Help me see you again. Emily's eyes softened. I wasn't trying to hide how I felt. I just didn't know how to bring it up. And I wasn't trying to avoid you, he said. I was just caught up in my own world. They looked at each other, to people who had finally learned how much they meant to one another after months of drifting apart. Daniel spoke quietly, but firmly. Emily, I promise I won't disappear from your life. We're still family. You're still my person. She brushed a loose hair behind her ear. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When you feel overwhelmed or lonely, don't do what I did. Don't keep it inside. He nodded. Deal. That night they watched a movie together, not really paying attention to the screen. Wasn't about the movie. It was about sharing. A final, peaceful evening, holding on to a moment they both knew they'd miss. Morning arrived sooner than either wanted. Emily drove him to the airport, her hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. Daniel noticed but didn't comment. He knew her well enough now to understand. At the airport, standing near the departure gate, Daniel turned to her. Emily, thank you for everything. She forced a smile, though her eyes warmed with emotion. Go make a good life, Daniel. He hugged her tightly longer than he ever had before. She held him back, steady but trembling just a little. When he finally pulled away, she whispered, I'm proud of you. That sentence hit him harder than any goodbye. As he walked toward security, he glanced back. Emily stood still, hands clasped, trying to be strong. She gave him one last small smile, the kind that held every emotion. She couldn't put into words. Daniel waved before turning the corner. Emily watched until he disappeared. Then exhaled shakily. Not a sob. Not a breakdown, just the quiet release of someone letting go with love instead of fear. Driving home alone felt strange. The house felt large in a way it never had before, every room echoing with memories. She walked into his bedroom and looked at the empty shelves, the neat bed, the faint smell of his cologne. But instead of crying, she sat down on his bed and whispered, He's going to be okay, and so am I. A soft peace settled inside her, gentle, steady, warm. She wasn't losing Daniel. Their relationship had changed, yes, but not disappeared. In fact, it felt stronger now because of everything they had finally said. She stood up, breathed deeply, and walked toward the window. Sunlight spilled across the floor, bright and honest. Like a new beginning, for the first time in months. Emily didn't feel lonely. She felt hopeful. Their bond had been shaken, exposed, tested. But it had also been rebuilt with honesty, vulnerability, and love. And that changed everything.